Okay, can you see the Gemara, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start basically just to finish up, to close out yesterday's daf. We're going to start from daf Tat Sadik Zayin Amud Beis. Just we mentioned this yesterday by right here by the yellow, about like 10 lines from the top, 11 lines from the top of Sadik Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara, I don't know why the Gemara is doing this, but what the Gemara is doing is giving you like riddles you would have on an IQ test. And you would have to figure it out. Like, let's say a lady is holding a baby and saying, oh, this baby is my son and my brother. So you would have to figure out, how's that possible? Of course, like the Gemara explained before, that the father had relations with his daughter, basically, and the son. So the son is a brother and a son of this girl. So that's what the Gemara is doing. So the Gemara is going to say like this: Baya, baya, whoa, whoa. Think about this. The lady's talking. Ma'ach, this guy is my brother. V'hu av, and he's my father. V'hu bal, he's also my husband. V'hu bar bal, and he's the son of my husband. V'hu bala de'ein, and he's the husband of my mother. V'anoah brata de'itze, and I am the daughter of his wife. He doesn't give bread to his brothers, the Yosaimim. B'nei brate, the son of the son of his daughter. What is this all about? Mishkach. That's why I have to bring up the charts again, just for two more times. Mishkachas lo. This happens. Begoy haba al imoy v'oil mimena bas v'chazavo al oisei bas v'chazav zakin v'oil v'oil mimena bon. Let me just show it to you in the picture so you see it clearly. How is that possible? So here it is. You have this guy. This guy Lemech is a goy, right? And he marries Oda. Okay, step one: Lemech marries Oda, and they have a son Yaval, a goy, right? This guy has relations with his mother. Okay, and they have a daughter Hagar. Okay, not only does he have relations with his mother, and they have a daughter Hagar, but Yaval, the son, has another relations with Hagar. So Hagar is his daughter, but also his husband and his wife, so to speak. Then the grandfather gets involved here, and he has relations with his granddaughter, Hagar, okay? And as a result of that derivation, they had two boys, Lot and Lavan. So the grandfather had relations with Hagar, and he died. So now Hagar tells this Yaval, I want you to support my kids, Lot and Lavan. You're related to me in so many different ways. First of all, you're my father. Second of all, you're my husband because you had relations with me. And then I'm the son of your I'm the son of your father, Lemach. I'm the wife of your father Lemach. You know, your father Lemach. Right? And these kids are your brothers by your father's side, because Lemech, if you think about it, has one son, Yavel, and then he had two sons, Lot and Lavan. So why don't you support them? That's what the Gemara is saying. Strange. Okay, let's see the next case, and then we're out of this. Anova 3 lines from the wide line. Anova ache. A lady says to somebody, you and me are brothers. Anova avich ache. Me and your father are brothers. Anova imach achi, and I and your mother are brothers. Mishkachas lo, this can be possible. Begoy haba al imoy v'hoylid mimenu shnei vanos. A guy that had a relation with his mother, and they had 2 daughters. V'chazo bal achas ben v'hoylid mimenu ben v'korle achasei. The imay. Okay. V'korle achasei. He calls him a sister. So basically, it's this case, a simple case. What's the case? A case is Lemach had a wife, Ada, and they had a son, Yaval, again. Yaval had a relation with his mother, and they had 2 daughters, Hagar and Sila. Sila, the second daughter, had another relation with the father, Yaval, and they had a son, Lot. So Hagar says to Lot, and he says, you and I are brothers because we share a common father, Yaval. You and your father, I and your father are brothers because we share a common mother. Ada is the mother of Yaval. and Ada is also the mother of Hagar. And me and your mother are sisters. So something like that. So that's the case. Final case that we're going to discuss, and then we get to the Mishnah, and then it gets more relevant. Ana va'at b'nei. This can happen by a Jewish person. Ana va'at b'nei achi. I and you are son of a brother. Ana v'avich b'nei achi. I and your father are the son of your brother. Ana v'imach. I and your mother b'nei achi are the son of your brother. This can be possible in a heter way. Reuven sheyesh lo shtei banos, v'asa Shimon nesav chad minei, v'asa bar Levi nesav chad minei, v'chamalei b'rei Shimon lebar b'rei the Levi. The son of Shimon says to the grandson of Levi. Now, this is the final case. This could happen. What's the case? You have a father that had three sons: Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Okay, Reuven had two daughters, Rachel and Leah, and Shimon, one of the brothers, married Leah and had Yitzchak. Levi had a son, Yaakov, and he married the other sister of Reuven, other daughter of Reuven, Rachel. Okay, now you can see in the picture, Yaakov and Rachel had Avram. So now the Yitzchak, the son of Shimon, right? The Yitzchak, the son of Shimon, he's talking to him. He says to Abraham, look how we're related. You and I are the sons of two sisters because I'm the son of Leah and you're the son of Rachel. I and your father, Yaakov, are the sons of two brothers because I'm the son of Shimon and Yaakov is the son of Levi. I and your mother Rachel are the sons of two brothers because I'm the son of Shimon and your mother Rachel is the daughter of Reuven. So this is possible beheter, right? And it happens by a Jewish family, this situation. Okay, that ends the whole piece. I mean, you find some things like that in the Hasidic families where long after the older brother gets married, another kid is born in the family, and there's interesting relations all around. Okay, Mishnah discusses like this. Here's the Mishnah, Daf Tzadik Zayin on the base, and this is where we begin. Hagiyorish nisgairu banaha imoy. A woman, let's say she's a goy, and she had two sons. Right? Let's say the two sons were married, okay, and they all, as a group, as a family, became converts. So the Mishnah says, let's say one of the brothers dies, so loy choltzim v'loy miyabim. There's no story of chalitza and no story of yibam here. Why? Because when you become a ger, it's like as if you're born again. The two brothers that became gerim at the same time are not related to each other. So therefore, if one brother dies, there's no yibam or chalitza here. Now, here, what we're going to discuss in the Gemara, and this is very, very important. Two brothers, right? Goyim, that they convert, right? So you're telling me that they're not related to each other. So if they each marry a woman, and let's say, for whatever reason, he dies or he has children, in not a Yibam situation. Can the other brother marry his former sister-in-law? Because they're not really brothers. So technically, they should be allowed to marry. He should be allowed to marry his brother at all, even in a non-Yibam situation. And then, so we're going to discuss that in the Gemara. Even if one of the brothers was their mother, when she was pregnant with him, became a convert, and he was born already a Jew. V'hasheni, and the second brother, his pregnancy and the birth was also done in holiness. In other words, he's born a regular Jew. So you would say they're related, but they're only related by their mother, because they're only related by the mother. There is no connection to the father when somebody becomes a ger. So the fact is that they both kids were born when the mother was Jewish, but one kid was born when the father was a goy. So therefore, they're not related by the brother, and therefore there would be no chalitza and yibam. Chalitza and yibam only applies when you are related to a brother by the father's side, by the paternal by the father's side. This would apply by a maid that also becomes a ger. Same idea. that the brothers are not related to each other. So this is the discussion of today. Look, the Gemara says like this: Bnei Yudin Amsa Ishtachru. The sons of Yudin the maid became free. In other words, the sons of Yudin, who's a goy, right? Her children became gerim. Okay. Now, so what happened? One of the brothers, let's say, divorced his wife or whatever, and the other brother wants to marry the woman. They can even swap wives. They can marry each other's wives. That's what he said. Because once you become a ger, you're like a new person. So you're not related to each other, right? You're not related to each other. It's like you have two different names. Even though you look alike and biologically you're brothers, but as becoming Jew takes away all your history, it erases all your history, so you're not brothers, and therefore you can marry one another. Amalei Rava, so Rava said, for Rav Sheshes asar. Rav Sheshes said that that's not permitted. Amalei, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov said, who asar b'nasharina. He said it's not permitted, and I'm saying it is permitted. So the Gemara explains, min ha'av v'lo min ha'eim. If they're brothers from the father and not from the mother, let's say the father, the goy, had two different wives, and they're just brothers from the father. Kuliyami loy pligi, loy shari. Everybody agrees that when they become gerim, converts, then they're permitted to swap wives because they're not related to the father. They're not related to each other at all. Mina ein v'loy mina av. But if they both shared a common mother and not a common father, and then they become gerim, so then everybody agrees that it's asr. Why would it be asr? You would say gershon is gaya kakot and shenoila dami, but since a person may come to make, if you allow them to swap wives with each other, people will say that Jewish people are also allowed to swap wives with each other. It'll spill over, and people will say that, oh, there's no Isser Eishes Ach anymore. And therefore, it's usher if they related from the mother. But when they're just related from the father, everybody knows they're gerim. They're not related. They're not brothers. Ki pligi, when are they arguing? Min av umin ha'em. When they're arguing, if they're both related from the father and mother. That means both brothers shared a father and a mother. Man the shari, the one that says they're permitted to swap wives. Basar abed shadinale. Everybody knows that they are gerim because everybody calls them B'nai Planya, the son of, their Goyish father, Karalahu. So that everybody knows that they're not Jews, they just became Jews, and therefore they're permitted to swap wives. Rav Sheshes says this would be permitted, Karalu Nami B'nai Plainis. Everybody calls them the daughter of their mother, and therefore they're somewhat related, and people are going to say, oh, by Jewish people, they're also permitted to swap wives. Ve'ika de Amar, others say, Palig Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rav Acha bar Yaakov would say, Afila ba'achim min ha'ein. Even by brothers from the mother's side, it doesn't matter how these two people are related. Once they become gerim, and no matter what, they're looked at as totally different, unrelated people, and they could swap wives, or they can, each one can marry the other's wife. My timer, and this is the whole point of the whole sugya. Gershon is gayer kakatan shenoila dami. A convert that becomes a ger, he is like as if he's born. His whole history is erased. Technically speaking, that a ger could technically marry his sister. If him and his sister became gerim, they're like unrelated people. They can marry each other. Of course, it's not done, but that's the same idea over here. They're not brothers, and therefore Rav Acha bar Yaakov totally permitted it. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Hagioris, in our Mishnah we learned, Hagioris and his Gari, but now Ima, if two boys became a ger, right? Now, one of them died. The Mishnah says, Lo yichotzim v'lo yimiyabim. There's no chalitza, no yibam. But the Torah, the reason is that you can't do yibam is because you can't marry your brother's wife. Because even though you're gerim, you can't marry your brother's wife. So my tama, this is a proof to Rav Sheshes. La mishum da'asiri, they must be prohibited from each other. Answers the Gemara loy. The aina b'toris chalitza v'yibam. There's no chalitza in yibam when the one of the wives died. But v'sharye la'alma, anybody else could marry her. In other words, they don't have to give chalitza yibam because the woman doesn't fall to yibam. But the inhu nami sharbet, one of the other's brothers is permitted. So that's how you're going to learn pshat in the Mishnah according to the opinion that says it's permitted. Okay, so the Gemara asks a question. The Mishnah says even if the two brothers both were born after the mother became a ger, right? One was born while the mother was pregnant with him, and then he was born after she became a ger. So really, these kids were born Jewish, and the Mishnah says you still can't do chalitza and yibum. So we're going to say like this: that part of the Mishnah can only make sense if you hold it's aser. Yamar bishlama asir. If you're going to say that it's aser, then a man by the two gerim, they can't marry each other's wife. Haini totally afilu. So the end of the Mishnah makes perfect sense. The avagav, the rishon harasa shlei b'kedusha v'leidasa b'kedusha. The first brother was born, was pregnant when he was a guy, and then he was born when his mother became a gioris. Vasheni, in the second one, harasa v'leidasa b'kedusha. When the mother was pregnant and when he was born, she was a full-fledged Jew. But nevertheless, certainly there's no chalitza and yibum there. And they can't swap wives because it could stay imahos dami. I would think they're like two women, two different mothers, and therefore they could swap wives. That's what the Mishnah is teaching you. Afilah hachi asira. That's why the Mishnah is teaching you that it's aser. Not only can't they do yibum, but they can't swap wives because at the end of the day, that will be a prohibited act. Ela amret shari. But if you would say that it is permitted, my afilu. What does it mean afilu? What is that coming to tell you? It is permitted to marry each other, and to not to do chalitza and yibum. Why would I think that just because one was born hayrasa v'leidasa b'kedusha, hayrasa shlei b'kedusha v'leidasa b'kedusha, and the second one was hayrasa v'leidasa b'kedusha? Why would I think that they would fall to yibum? The answer is yes. The apagav to tavayu leidasim b'kedusha. Since they were both born with as a Jew, I might think that they would not be permitted to marry But also lachlufa b'Yisrael, a person will say that every Jew will make by Jews also. They will say that the eishes ach is permitted. Afilu hachi shari, that's permitted. Okay, basically what the Gemara is trying to say, bring a proof from our Mishnah either way. And the Gemara is pushing away the proof. The Ketani afilu. This Ikadami says the Mishnah makes sense more towards the opinion that says it's permitted. What does it mean afilu? Even then, it's asr. Stop over here. Just to review where we're holding. The Gemara is discussing over here a machloikis between Rav Acha and Rav Sheshes regarding two boys, goyim, that became converted, and they married. They're married to women now, and then one of them, they want to swap wives or whatever. One gives a divorce to his wife, and the other one wants to marry her. Now, if they were really brothers, you can't do it. But we know Gershon is Gaya Kakatan Shenoila Dami. Nevertheless, Rav Acha says it's permitted. It's permitted that because Gershon is Gaya Kakatan Shenoila Dami, and Rav Sheshes says it's not permitted. So that's what we're going to constantly bring proofs throughout the day, throughout the daf. Toshma, Shnei Achim To'imim Gerim. You have two twin brothers, Gerim, right? V'chein Shchorim. There's no chalitz and yibum if one of the brothers die. And you're not, if you do have relations, you don't get a chorus if you're eishes ach. So if you just look at this alone, that means if one of them takes on the other one's wife, he doesn't get chorus, but it seems that it's also to do so. That's the Gemara's question. And then the Gemara says, the Mishnah Brisa says, so right away, this is the question, right at this point. But if they were both born Jewish, then of course, the chayev mishum eishes ach. Then you can't marry each other's wife. If they both had a pregnancy and they were born with kedusha, then the Yibum applies. They're like Jews no matter what. Getonim a partial quote is that two Gerim, two brothers Gerim, they can't swap each other's wife, but if they do, you don't get karis for that. You don't get punished karis by that. We go to the top of the page, but it's not permitted. So you see from here that Brisa says it's not permitted. And says the Gemara, who adin da'afili yisurim nami lek. There won't be an isra. But I did the boil misnei seifa ava chiyovim, turn around nation and chayovim. When they were both born by kedusha, the Brisa has to say that you would be chayiv kares. So their Reisha says ein chayovim. But really, the Reisha holds, the beginning of the Brisa holds, yeah, if they both were goyim and they became converts at the same time, these two brothers, there wouldn't be a problem to marry each other's wife. Amar Rava. Rava said a new point over here. We know that if the mother was right, we don't say that the boy is related to his father. There's no such a thing of a relation. If a ger has no relation to his father, no matter what, even if his mother and father became Jewish, he's not related at all to his father. Loi tema, don't say the reason is mishum d'shtufi bezima d'lo yadia, because goyim sleep around and we don't know for sure if this is his father. That's why we don't look at him as his father. But if we did know chayshina, we would be concerned that maybe they're. So in that case, if you would say that, then if you have a father and his wife that become gerim, maybe their sons are related to each other because via the father. The answer is no. If we know that this is the father, for example, the mother and father were in jail together, there was nobody in jail, and these two children were born from them. So we know this is the father and this is the mother. There's no question about that. And nevertheless, we don't relate the boys to each other via the father. Because we just discussed two twin brothers. The tipa achas hoyisod, obviously there were one drop. They became twin brothers. There's no chalitza, no yibam over there. If the mother converted while being pregnant with them, there's no chalitza, no yibam. Why not? We know who the father is. Shmami no. From here we see that afkur rachmon lazare the ksiv b'sar chamay b'sam v'zirma susam zirmasam. For some reason, the semen of a goy is considered like the zera, the semen of a donkey, of a horse, of a horse, and therefore, just like a horse, you can't point. A horse will not tell you, "Oh, this is my son." So the pasuk says that we don't have a relationship between a father and son relationship by goyim when it comes to these kind of things. So even if you knew it was his 100% the father, there's no yibam or chalitza would apply in such a situation. Tar Shema, come in here. We go back to the machlokes. Can two gerim that become gerim, can they marry each? Can the one brother marry his brother's wife? Amar Rabbi Yosi, Ma'aseh b'niftayim hager she'asa she'nosha eishes achiv mi'imah. Here, a beautiful proof. The story of Niftayim, the ger, and he married his brother's wife from his mother. Means they shared one mother, okay? And his brother got rid of his wife, whatever, and he married him. And the Chachamim heard about the story. They said, "Ain't ishus lager." A ger can't marry anybody. So this cryptic statement, the Gemara interrupts. What does that mean? A ger, when you come convert, you can't marry. A ger that gives betroths a woman, kedushin doesn't apply. That of course not. Chachamim said, you're right. He did a good thing. He was allowed to marry his brother's wife because there's no isser of marrying your brother's wife by a ger. So that's precisely what Rav Acha said. And this is a question against Rav Sheshes. My love, wouldn't you think that the Bryce is talking about the nosva'ah kishuhu ger? He married his brother's wife, that his brother married this woman when he was a ger. In other words, the brother of the mother married this woman when he was a ger, and that's his regular wife, and then he divorced her, and then his other brother, the convert, decided to marry that woman. So you see, it's permitted. Answers the Gemara, loy. No, the nasva kishu goy, his brother. This was his wife when she was a goy, and they became converted together, but they didn't live with each other after he became a Jew. So that's why he was permitted to, because this woman became also like a gay Georus, and his brother never married her after he became a ger. That's why it was permitted. So the Gemara says a kishu goy, my lemembra. If this is his wife when he was a goy, what is the novelty of that? Certainly he can marry that. This woman is becoming a Georus. Answers the Gemara, Mahu Desema, Ligza Kshugoy, Auto Kshuger, Kamash Malam. I might think, make a gezerah that you can never marry your brother's wife, even if it was your brother's wife when she was a guy, when he was a guy, because you might come to marry your brother's wife after he becomes a ger. Kamash Malam, we don't make such a gezerah. But the truth behold, that if your brother, after becoming a ger, marries somebody, the other brother, the ger, cannot marry that woman anymore. He can't marry. That's considered his brother's wife. Tashma, come in here. The Amma Ma Ben Yusan. This Ben Yusan, who was he was like a teacher, and he said like this. He traveled. He was the Marco Polo. Kishalachti lekrachayam. I was traveling to the islands of the sea. Matsasi, there was Jews all over the place. Matsasi ger echad. I found one ger. Shanasa, he married. He married his brother's wife from his mother. He introduced me. Hi, this is my wife. Oh, by the way, she was one time married to my brother from my mother. So I right away jumped on him. Me here, shchicha. Who gave you permission to do that? Amali, he said, Haraisha v'shiva baneha. There's a woman with 7 kids that had this similar story, right? That means this is what he said. On this bench, Yashav Rabbi Akiva said, Rabbi Akiva came to visit us. I don't know, he traveled all over the place. And he said, on this bench, he said, Ger noisi eishes achamimah. A ger can marry his brother's wife from his mother. And Rabbi Akiva also said, He dvar Hashem el yoner shenis lema, shenis dibra imar shchina, shlisus le dibra shchina. Rabbi Akiva also said that Yonah had 2 revelations from God, but not 3. Okay, but the point is that he said testimony that Rabbi Akiva gave a permission for a ger to marry his brother's wife. Ketonim is ger noitzi eishes hachamima. That ger could marry his brother's wife. My love, don't you think the nasva achav kishu ger, that it's his brother's wife? That means the brother married after he became a convert. He married this Jewish lady, and then he got rid of her. The other brother is permitted to marry her. So we see that's permitted, not like Rav Sheshis. Answers the Gemara, the Nasuk Shugai. It's talking about his brother's wife, that he was married to her when he was a guy, and then they both became converts, but they didn't remain married to each other. So the other brother can marry her. Maila Memra, what would be the novelty of that? Same idea. I might think, make a gezerah, that if you allow him to marry his brother's wife when he was a goy, he might come to marry his brother's wife after he becomes a ger. And that's not permitted. Kamash malan, so that we don't, this is the chiddush, that we don't make that kind of gezerah. Now, the Gemara asks just a side question. This guy, this Ben Yehosan, that's what he's called, Ben Yossian, he said, I'm permitted to marry my brother's wife. And he proved that Rabbi Akiva said it, Once he was cornered and asked, how are you allowed to marry your brother's wife? He said, Rabbi Akiva said so. Umi mehemen, would we believe somebody who says something like that? Any Talmud Chacham that says over a novel teaching, like a new, out of the park chiddush, in Koydem Ma'asa Amra, if he said it before of any event, Shaiman Lai, we hear him, we accept it from him. V'im lav, but if it came after an event, here he was cornered. Why did you do that? And now he comes up with the thing that Rabbi Akiva said it. Ain't Shaiman Lai. We don't accept it. We assume that maybe he's making a mistake. Rabbi Akiva may have never said that. So how do we trust this person? So the Gemara says 3 reasons why we trusted Ben Yossen. First of all, he always said over this teaching before he married his brother's wife. So he said it, so we can trust him. He said over another story. He said who it was. He brought a proof that that I'm not the first ger to marry his brother's wife. There's a woman with 7 kids, and brought another story that so and so did the same. The reason why we trust him, he said 2 teachings from Rabbi Akiva. He said one teaching that a ger could marry his brother's wife, and then he said, Rabbi Akiva also said of something about Yonah. So since we trust him of what Rabbi Akiva said about Yonah, so we can trust him that Rabbi Akiva also gave him the permission to marry his brother's wife. Okay, the Gemara continues. Just to get to that point, that once you brought it up, Rabbi Akiva gave a teaching and said that Yonah ben Amittai only had 2 visions from Hashem. Amamar, Vahid Dvar Hashem El Yonah Shem Eslema. So Rabbi Akiva said, Sheinis Dibur Imar Shechina. God spoke to Yonah only twice. One to go to Nineveh, and then in the end of Yonah, when he finally acquiesced and followed Hashem's direction, if the whole story of Yonah, as you know. Shlishis Leidibrema. We never find in Tanakh that God spoke to him a 3rd time. So wait a second. Not true. Valksiv, we find another place that Yonah, who Heishiv Eskvul Yisomar Baichamasad Yom Haravak Dvar Hashem, Ashadiba B'yat Abdu Yonah ben Amittai Hanavi. There's a king called Yeravim ben Yoash, who was an evil king, but he was very successful in his military campaigns, even though everybody was addicted to Avodah Zarah in his time. And the reason is they didn't speak Lashon Hara. And he was so successful in his military campaigns, he restored everything that was taken away from the Jewish people from the king Aram. And this was exactly what Yonah ben Amittai told him that's going to happen. So we see that Yonah actually was saying prophecy even for a 3rd time. Answers the Gemara, Amar Ravina al Iskin Niven Kama. Regarding the matter of Nineveh, God spoke to him twice, not 3 times. Although God could have spoken to him another time, he stopped. And you probably see the reason. Yonah was trying to escape from God. So God said, if you're running away from me, I'm not going to bother, having long conversations or many conversations with you. And Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, right, Yonah never was actually the one that gave the vision by Yeravim ben Yoash that he would be successful in his campaign. But Hachi Kama, this is what the pasuk says: Hanavi, just like Nineveh, it was the bad Gezerah was turned around from bad to good, and the city of Nineveh was spared. So also in the days of Yeravim ben Yoash, for the Jewish people, it turned around, a bad situation turned around to be a good situation. But it doesn't mean that this was all predicted by Yonah. Yonah, Hashem spoke to twice, but the similarity is with the story of Nineveh, that just like Nineveh was a situation where something bad turned into good, so in the days of Yeravim ben Yoash, something bad turned into good. Back to the discussion of can a ger marry his brother's wife? So the Brisa says like this. This is a long Brisa, but we'll point out the point. A ger that his birth was in Kedusha, and his mother pregnancy was when she was a goy. So her mother was pregnant with him. She became a gioris, and then this kid was born. He's related to his mother, but he's not related to his father. Ketzad, what does this all mean? If he marries his sister from his mother's side, right? So Yotzi has to give her a divorce, right? Because even though maybe the sister became a ger or whatever, but no matter who his sister is, if his mother would have another girl, that would really be his sister. So you have to give her a divorce. If he married his sister Mina'av, Yekayem, he's allowed to keep he's allowed to marry his sister from his father's side. Achois ha'av mina'ein yoitzi, his father's sister from his mother. So achois ha'av, the sister of the father, mina'ein, his maternal aunt. Okay, his father had a sister, but they were only related from their mother. Yoitzi, he has to give her a divorce because it looks like a gzera of a regular sister mina'ein. We go to Amar Beis, mina'av. But if they're only related, these two, the father and the sister are only related by the paternal, you're allowed to keep it. Your mother, his mother's sister from the mother, he has to give a divorce. Mina'av is machlokes. If she's related from the father, the mother's sister is related just from the father. Anything that has to do with the mother, even though this sister of the mother is only related to the mother via sharing a common father, you have to give a divorce. Anything just related to the father's side, you can keep. Now, here's the point. That's why if you just leave out the whole brisa, look what this brisa says. That that this person is permitted to marry his brother's wife from his mother's side. And he's allowed to marry the wife of his brother from his father's side. So we see clearly that you could marry. He's allowed to marry any erva. This kid is permitted to marry his wife's his father's wife, not his mother, of course, but his father's wife, because he's not even related to his father. Now the Mishnah says, what happens? A ger, a regular ger, new point over here. A meger ger, imagine he's from Africa, and nasa isha abita. He married a woman and his daughter. Well, when he becomes a Jew, you have to pick and choose who you're going to remain married with. Koinus achas, umaitzi achas. You have to take one and get rid of another one. You can't live with a mother and a daughter, even though you were living as a guy with them. What this means, we're going to explain in a moment. A guy became a ger. Okay, him and his wife became gerim. Okay, and his wife died. He's allowed to marry his mother-in-law. Why he would do that, I don't know. And some say, no, you're not allowed to marry your mother-in-law. Okay, but we have a parsha quote that a ger is mutter be'eshes achiv. He's mutter to marry his brother's wife. My love, the nasva achiv kishuhu ger, that his brother married this woman after he became Jewish. And nevertheless, when the brother decides to get rid of that woman, the other brother is permitted to marry her. So that's a proof to Rav Acha against Rav Sheshes. Answers the Gemara, the nasva kishuhu guy. It's talking about his wife that he married when he was a guy. And therefore, after he became a Jew, his brother, he didn't remain married to her. And so therefore, the Gemara asked my member, what would be the novelty of that? They never lived with each other after he became a Jew. So Gemara says, I should make a gezerah and say that you can't marry your brother's wife, even if it was your brother's wife when he was a guy, because you might marry your brother's wife after he became a ger. Kamash Malam, we don't make such a gezerah. Okay, so ends the sugya, by the way. The ends the sugya is, can a person who's a ger, two gerim, two brothers became a gerim, each married after they became ger, they married Jewish women, right? Can one of them, in the case one divorces his wife, can the other brother marry that woman? So that will remain a machlokes Rav Acha and Rav Sheshes. Rav Acha says yes, because ger shnis gayer kakatan shnei ladami. They're not related to each other. And Rav Sheshes says absolutely not, because people will come to say, if you allow brothers to marry each other's wives, people will extend it that Jews, regular, normal Jews, can marry, brothers can marry each other's wives. Amamar, we learned before, nasa isha bita kainas achas moitzi achas lechatchila leyichnas, that a person should not marry a woman and his daughter. What do you mean? You're telling a guy that who becomes a ger, get rid of one wife. If you marry a woman and her daughter, you have to get rid of them. What does it mean you're not supposed to marry them? It's going back on a little bit further. That's what it's going. We just said that a ger is permitted to marry his sister from his father's side. If they have a paternal sister, he's permitted to marry. But that we only say you do it b'di'evet, but lechatchila, don't marry your sister. We don't allow that. Then we learned in the brisa, and this will end. Meisa ishtoi, if his wife dies, the ger's wife died, muta b'chamaisa, he can marry his mother-in-law. The ika detani asa b'chamaisa. And some say you can't marry a mother-in-law. What's that machlokes all about? Chada Rabbi Yishmael, the Chada Rabbi Akiva. One is according to Rabbi Yishmael, and one is going according to Rabbi Akiva. Man da asa Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael has severe punishments for having relations with your mother-in-law. Even after your wife died, he holds you get sreifa, burning, the worst type of punishment. Just like when your wife is alive, there's sreifa. So even when your wife is dead, the mother-in-law always remains a powerful isser. Therefore, by a goy, even if his wife died, we geyser and we say a ger cannot. Got a ger goes to the beger. They told him that you can't marry your mother-in-law. Uman Deshari, the opinion that says a ger could marry his mother-in-law after his wife dies, Rabbi Kiva, he holds like Rabbi Kiva. A mother-in-law after your wife died by a Jew, it goes down a notch. And therefore, because it's a little bit lighter, so therefore Chachamim said that by a ger, after his wife dies, they didn't make a gezerah that he shouldn't be able to marry his mother-in-law. Maybe Yisrael will do the same. By ger, they didn't make that gezerah. So these are some of the discussions that come up with ger shnizgayer kekatan shenoilo dami. Big problems that interesting that relate to marriage. Okay, we're stopping here on Daf Tzaddik Chesam and Beis by the Mishnah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, very good.
Oh yeah, thank you very much.
Now you can go eat now.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Gute Nacht.